A while ago, we made a tier list talking about my favorite decks to play of all time, all of my favorite archetypes, all my favorite combinations, whatever it may be. Now we are going to be talking about, and it doesn't matter, like, we're going to be assuming, like, that they're in their proper format, okay? I played a lot of Hat format, Edison format, things like that, and we're going to assume that's wherever they're strongest at, we're going to be ranking them based on how well they played. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Let's get started from S all the way to D tier. We are going to be starting off with the Bubble Man Beat. Actually, this is a pretty good engine. Bubble Man, the Ninja XYZ. Is it Blade Armor Ninja? Again, I'm still relearning all of my cards, guys. I've been out of the game for a long time. And Bubble Man Beat, it played pretty well, man. For its time, played very well. And that's going to be the entire point of this. Obviously, I'm not going to say for its time, for this format. It's whenever it was popular, whenever I was playing it, that's how it performed, okay? We're going to start off with an A tier for Bubble Man Beat. Now, an equip spell deck. This was a little bit more of a fun deck that I ended up making, and there's a couple, and I guess a couple in a row over here. There's a couple decks that I keep meaning to make a video on for a deck profile. Like, I have a very fun equip spell deck with Moon Mirror Shield and all that. It ends up working okay. We're going to throw this one to the C tier. Now, Return Field. This was a big mix, and this is why I wanted to mention that I have a couple custom decks over here. It's filled with things like gadgets. It's filled with things like the Star Seraphs, the hand cards, all of that. Very fun. It actually ended up being okay, and I keep meaning to make a deck profile on that, so look out for that. B tier for this one. Now, a Beast-type deck. I could never make a strict Beast-type deck work. I'm talking like the Green Baboon Defender of the Forest with some X-Saber Arabellums, with some Horn of the Phantom Menace, that type of stuff. Unfortunately, the Beast type is going to have to go into the D tier. Can never really make it work, man. Now, Gladiator Beast Saber, another custom deck of mine. I always wanted to combine two of my favorite decks, the Gladiator Beast archetype and the X-Saber archetype, and I used a lot of Beast Warriors from both, and I was thinking, like I just mentioned with actually the Beast deck, Horn of the Phantom Beast. Unfortunately, I could never just make it work. I had the idea, and I was like, you know what? This could work, man. This could work. I can never make it work, though. We're going to throw this one to the D tier. Now, Battery Man Watts. Watts were good, but the problem is, once you mixed in the Battery Man cards, the Watts kind of like died down a little bit. This one played okay. I'm going to throw it into the C tier. Final countdown. Dude, back in the day, as annoying as this deck was, this deck performed. And this deck is going to go into the S tier, man. I'm talking like, I don't remember. It was like 2012-ish, something along those lines. When you had the Scarecrow card that you could discard, you had Wabuku's Threatening Roar, and there wasn't like enough going on the field where people could deal with it. I can't believe that I was that kind of guy, but the Final Countdown deck performed very well. Teledad, back in the day, ridiculously strong. Best deck that we've taken a look at so far. The Teledad absolutely performed, and same with the Dino Rabbit. I loved playing this deck. It worked out. As soon as Rescue Rabbit dropped, a lot of people ended up bringing back the Sabersaurus, I believe it was. Another very, very good build. This one's actually going to go right behind Teledad. Teledad was a little bit stronger for its day. Diamond Dude Turbo, more of the same. We have a few decks that were pretty meta over here. Diamond Dude Turbo, very strong. I'm going to put it into the S tier at the bottom of S tier, along with Plant Tengu, another very popular deck. I'm going to split this one with the Final Countdown. Now, finally, we're out of the S tier because now we have the Agent deck. When the Agent cards first came out, they performed very well. They worked together nicely, and I had a lot of fun playing with them. This one's going to go into the A tier right ahead of Bubble Man Beat. Now, the Agent Herald. I used to, and I know this isn't a custom deck build, I used to mix in the Herald of Perfection archetype with the new Agents that came out, and it worked. It performed okay, but I found the Agents worked better just by themselves. This deck is going to go into the B tier right ahead of my Return Field deck, which I cannot wait to show you guys, okay? Karakuri. Even at this deck's peak, nothing really, like, it never really killed anything. You know, you could win games, you can have some good moments. I think this is, I actually think this is a C tier deck. C tier deck. We're going to put it at the top of C tier, man. Top of C tier. Now, the Twilight Sky Scourge cards. The whole idea was to use Phantom Menace with Sky Scourge, and is it Norelius? Sky Scourge, Norelius? I don't remember how you pronounce the name. I don't remember what exactly the name is. Excuse me if you can hear my notification, guys. Yeah, sometimes the Twilight deck just did work by itself. You get all of the crap. What's that card called? The zombie deck. You can have, not Zephyros. Zephyros is also in the graveyard. Is it Mizuki? Sorry for the jump cut. I did look it up. It was Mizuki. Mizuki, you get those in the graveyard. You get your zombie, your 4-star zombie master on the field. That worked out sometimes. So this one's going to go to the bottom of B tier. Sometimes it worked out. Now the Frog Vanity deck. Frog Monarchs, except you're mixing in Vanity's Fiend, Majesty's Fiend. This was a strong deck, but shockingly it didn't work nearly as well as it did for the actual regular Frog Monarch deck. But it did work out very nicely. I'm going to put this one to the A tier, right behind the Agents Anti-Meta. I've always been able to make this deck work. This was one of my personal decks that I've played throughout the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's always been really good. But I think these decks were... Ooh. Yeah, you know what? It was one of my main decks, and I've placed with them back in the day. So I'm going to put this into the S tier, but at the bottom of S tier. Arcana Force. I've talked about it on the channel, guys. Throughout my history playing this game, I have always tried to make Arcana Force decks work. Never worked. And I can't believe that we got support for it. So check out the channel. We just reacted to new Arcana Force cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arcana Force is the worst deck that we played so far. D tier. I almost want to make an F tier for it. Yeah, I am. Brought a brand new F tier for the Arcana Force. Good job. Now the hero decks. Hero decks are always solid. There's a lot of variety to them. You can do whatever you want with them. The hero decks are absolutely going to go into the S tier as well. I'm going to put it right behind Anti-Meta. Now, Elemental Hero. I'm talking straight up Elemental Hero. I'm talking like Sparkman, Avion, Burstinatrix. I'm talking like Flame Wingman. Pure GX Elemental Heroes. I couldn't make this deck work either. But, oh, the pure Elemental Hero decks. Yeah, like, man, when these cards, they just couldn't flow. You had to wait for polymerization. There was no special fusion back in the day. I'm going to put this one to the F tier ahead of Arcana Force. Sucks, man, but there's only so much that you can do. Now, let's talk about the Tellarknight cards, guys. Honestly, this is one of those decks that's tough because I haven't given it a ton of time. I played with it very, very little. But I did enjoy from what I played, and it was okay. So I'm going to put this one at the bottom of B tier. And TGs. TGs had an era where they were very strong. Very strong. And had some very complicated combinations for the back in the day. TG used to be strong. I'm going to put it at the top of A tier, right ahead of Agents. Excuse me. Now, the Toon decks. While this did end up getting support, it still wasn't the greatest deck in the world. Unfortunately, this one's going to have to go into the D tier as well. I'm going to put it right ahead of the Beast cards. Now, Zombie World. I'm talking pure Zombie World. Zombie World, Zombie Master, Ill Blood, those types of things. It was okay. You could scrape by and get some wins, but at the end of the day, this deck didn't really hold up to a lot of other decks on the list, and this is going to go into the D tier. I'm actually going to put this one right behind the Toon. Now, Skull Servants. Guys, Skull Servants are one of the most underrated decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. With all the support that they got, you can get a card out that's like 12,000 attack. One of the most underrated decks of all time, guys. I have played very well with these over the years. Very, very well. They can be beat, though. It depends if they're going up against something that removes stuff from the graveyard or like really has a quick stop to King of the Skull Servants. I'm going to put this one to the A tier. I think it's so underrated, though. So underrated. Now, the Venom deck. Hey, look at that. We have one worse than Arcana Force. Yeah. One of the worst archetypes of all times, guys. The Venom counters are basically useless, and nothing good comes from this deck, okay? I thought Arcana Force would be at the absolute bottom, man. Now, the Worm deck. This is one that I loved playing. Worm Zero was a blast to get out, but that's really all you had. Future Fusion, Worm Zero. If Worm Zero came out, you could win games, but that's a big if. So this deck really struggled, but I don't think it struggled enough to put it into the D tier. I'm going to put it very low C tier, okay? X-Sabers. Again, back in the day, X-Sabers had their heyday, and I was part of that. And I played X-Sabers throughout my entire time playing this game. Dude, X-Sabers were great back in the day, but I don't think it was an S tier deck. I'm actually going to put Sabers right behind the Agents. I think it's a fair placement. Now, Scrap decks. I think this is just a solid B tier. You can win games, you can lose games. It was always enough to keep up in its time. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of different combinations that you could do with this. I think this is a solid B tier. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier. Predaplant. A little bit more of the same vibe. You could win some games, had some good cards, but it wasn't really anything that stacked up into the A and S tier. I'm going to also put this one to the B tier, but I'm going to put it right behind Tellarknight. Now, the Nordic deck. When these were popularized, it didn't really hold up. If you were able to get, like, Odin out there, if you were able to get Thor out there, but even then, they weren't invincible or anything like that. You know what I mean? It was difficult at the time to get the synchro monsters that you needed out. It was an inconsistent deck. I think this one's going to go into the C tier. I'm going to put it actually right behind the Karakuri deck, okay? Ninjutsu Art. This is another deck that I find very underrated. Because you could, depending on, the thing is, this deck had a lot of variety depending on your targets for the ninjutsu art of transformation. It everybody used different things. I was a big fan of Prime Material Dragon. Is it Water Dragon Ninja? I believe it is. There was a lot of fun to be had with this deck, and I do think it's very underrated. Then I like to add Miss Valley Falcon, get those cards back to my hand, keep the monster out, those things. Very fun. I'm going to put this one also into the B tier. I think it's an underrated deck, and I'm actually going to put this one at the top of B tier. I think it is pretty underrated, okay? Convulsion of Nature. Guys, I actually built a Convulsion of Nature deck that was fun. It worked. But the problem is, if you're playing like any sort of high level with it, it can't keep up. It's a very, very okay deck, and I think I did make a deck profile in one of the formats. You got to go check that out because it's a fun deck that ended up working. I believe it was for Edison format. We're going to throw this one to the C tier, top of C tier. Naturia. I can never make this work, guys. I can never make it work. All of these cards seemed like they were so great, right? You could just lock your opponent down. They can only activate one card per turn. Bamboo Shoot's awesome. But the decks, oftentimes the decks that it was fighting against could just get over what the Naturia deck was doing. It's a bunch of cards that seem good on paper, but they just can't keep up. Does that make sense, or am I a bad player? This is all my personal experience with the decks, okay? This one's also going to go into the C tier. I'm going to put the Naturias right... Guys, I was able to make Convulsion of Nature work. I'm going to put Naturia right behind it. Now, Monarchs. Stripe Monarchs. Once they started introducing the Monarch support, was a very, very good deck. Very good, very strong. I'm going to put this one to the A tier. I'm going to put it ahead of the Frog Vanity deck. All right, guys, let's move on to Infernity. Guys, when Infernity was popular, there was no beating this deck. There was no touching this deck. They won everything. Everything. When they came on and they were unlimited, man, were these things strong. I'm actually putting it into the S tier, straight ahead of Teledad. I think in its heyday, that's the best deck that we've taken a look at so far now. Lightsworn. They've always been a very consistent, very good deck. I think it's another S tier. Where am I going to throw Lightsworn? Lightsworns have always been really good, man. I'm actually going to throw Lightsworn ahead of Plant Tengu. Another very, very good deck. Twilight, a little bit more of the same. Twilights were also very strong, but I do think Pure Lightsworns performed a little bit better. I'm going to also throw this one to the S tier, but I'm going to throw it right ahead of... Yeah, maybe Plant Tengu is a little bit better than Twilight. I know it's a little bit strange to separate them, but I'm going to. Malefics. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Malefic decks got support from since back in the day when I played them. And the Truth Dragon was like the big baddie that you could get out back in the day, but there were a lot of fun cards that you could get out. It just didn't hold up. You can only have one Malefic out at a time. You needed a field spell. Well, I don't recall if Mound of the Bound Creator was out. I think it was, but that didn't really even make that much of a difference. It was okay. You could make it work. But oftentimes, you just ended up losing. I'm going to put this one to the C tier ahead of Convulsion of Nature. Now, Masked Hero. Specifically, Masked Hero. Okay? It doesn't stack up to the hero decks, but the Masked Hero themselves were very strong. I think the Masked Heroes themselves are a B tier deck. I'm going to put it right behind the Ninjutsu Art deck. Okay? Gravekeeper. It's always been very good and very consistent. I think it's a solid A tier. Nothing about it screams like, oh my god, this deck is busted. This deck has always been busted. Sorry, I'll maybe move my face cam down there. It's always been very good. Gravekeepers is going to go into the A tier. I'm going to put it ahead of the X-Sabers. Now, Gladiator Beast. Hey, when Gladiator Beasts were popular, guys, dude, they were popping. War Chariots everywhere. When that deck first got introduced, man, it was hype. This is an S tier deck as well. I've had a lot of success with Gladiator Beasts over the years. I'm going to put it right behind Lightsworn. Okay, let's continue on to the Gishkis. The Gishkis had so much potential, man, but they ended up... I can't remember which it was, but before they even actually dropped, they ended up limiting cards from the Gishki deck, so it was nerfed straight off the bat. But as time went on, people have figured it out. I figured it out, and I really, really enjoyed playing this deck. It was a good deck. It was an underrated deck. I'm going to put it in the Scrap Predaplant territory, and I'm going to put the Gishkis right behind Predaplant. Now, Herald of Perfection. This was always a good deck. I think it's another solid B tier deck. You can beat Herald. Sometimes Herald beats you. Depends if you go first. Depends what you draw on the first turn, how quickly you're able to get Herald of Perfection out there. I'm going to put Herald of Perfection into the B tier as well. I'm going to put it right behind the Masked Hero deck. Now, continuing on to Frog Monarchs. This was my main deck throughout my entire history playing this game. I've always been able to make it work. I've had a lot of fun playing this deck. I've had a ton of success with this deck. It is one of the most successful decks that I've personally ever played, and I'm going to put... The problem is, The Glightsworns and Gladiator Beasts, I have performed better than I have with Frognark, so I think I'm going to put it right behind the Gladiator Beast archetype, okay? Fortune Ladies. Another thing, kind of like Arcana Force, where I have tried my hardest to make the deck work. I haven't been able to get past okay. So this one is a C tier deck. I'm going to put them right... I'm going to put them right in front of the Batteryman Watts, okay? Fabled. Deck has never worked out. It's a knockoff version of Dark World. They always kind of sucked. I'm putting it into the D tier. I'm going to put it right behind Zombie World, okay? Evil. The Evil Swords. The Evil Tiles. Or Evolti. I don't remember what they were called. Very good deck when it came out. But it wasn't... Oh my god, I just realized it's misspelled Bubbleman Beat. What's wrong with me? Crazy. These were fun cards. They were good cards that can compete. I think this is an A tier archetype. I'm actually going to put it right at the bottom of A tier, right with Bubbleman Beat. Now, Cloudians. Ooh, do we have one worse than Venom? You know what, guys? We have one worse than Venom. I wanted to make this deck work so bad growing up because I loved Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and I thought the Cloudian cards were awesome. F tier. F tier right behind Venom because at least with Venom, you could get some reptiles in the graveyard and you could summon like the Venomenagas or the whatever, the King of Poisonous Snakes, that one. At least you had a beat stick there. At least you had its own Icarus attack. I don't remember what that was called. Yeah. No. Cloudians are the worst one. Crystal Beast. Back in the day, I used to play Crystal Beast. I know that they have support now. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my personal experience with all of these decks. Okay? And when I was playing this game, Crystal Beasts were garbage. They were horrible. This is going into the F tier ahead of Arcana Force. Because at least you could get Crystal Abundance. You could nuke the field sometimes. Every once in a while, Sapphire Pegasus can come in. Oh, do I want to move it up? I'm thinking about, like, sometimes you get the field spell rolling. It's not useless. I'm going to put it at the bottom of D tier. We're going to bump it up a little bit now. Dark World. It was a pretty consistent deck. Once it ended up getting support, once again, you ended up getting Grapha, Gates of the Dark World. It was a very good deck. I'm going to throw this one to the B tier, top of B tier, okay? Counter Fairies. Now, I have very limited play with this Pendulum Counter Fairy cards, but oh my god. Dude, my Counter Fairy deck was incredible once the Pendulum cards came out. And as much as I hated Pendulums, woo! Oh, very underrated. I'm talking Skull Servant underrated, okay? There are a few deck types that I will stand by. And like, a little bit beyond the hat format, oh, you can win some games with this. You can lock some people down with this. I love the Counter Fairies. I think they are excellent with that support. I'm going to put the Counter Fairies... I'm going to put it with the Skull Servants, but I had more success with the Counter Fairies than I did Skull Servants. I'm going to put it right ahead, okay? Ragna Zero. A deck that was built right around Ragna Zero. You use things like Burden of the Mighty. You use a lot of hand cards. You use a lot of 4-stars to get your Ragna Zero out as soon as possible. And then once you get it out, the engine starts flowing nicely, but the problem is it couldn't keep up with a lot of decks that were out there. So this one's going to go into the C tier ahead... Yeah, ahead of C tier, okay? Let's continue on to the Watts. I also think the Watts are a very, very, very underrated archetype. You can make these work. Watt Giraffe is great. There's a lot of great trap cards that you could use. Guys, I'm sorry. I think the Watts are good. Nobody uses the Watts. They're great. I'm going to put them right ahead of Frog Vanity, okay? A tier. Now, the Gadgets. They got some support. They got a lot better with the support. I think it's a solid B tier. I'm going to put the Gadget deck right behind Herald of Perfection, okay? And finally, we have Absolute Zero. When Absolute Zero first dropped, guys, Absolute Zero was an animal to deal with. And back in the day, like, this is like, I don't know if there was another card when it leaves the field, it nukes the field. This was a mess to deal with, along with all of the heroes that you can get out there. Absolute Zero was very fun. It was very good. I am going to be putting this one into the A tier. I'm going to be putting this one right ahead of the Evo deck. Now, this has been ranking all of my favorite archetypes based on how I performed with them. Infernity being the best, Cloudian being the worst. Let me know what you guys think down below. And if you want me to talk about my enjoyment playing all of these decks, we did make a tier list ranking all of my favorite archetypes. Again, thank you so much for being here, guys. Take care, everybody.